Deploying and managing cloud servers often involves multiple steps, right from installing software applications to creating users and running specific configurations that actually match your needs. And this is where Cloud-Init steps in to actually help you automate the entire process right from the initial boot phase. Hello there, my name is Humphrey Pyre and I'm a developer Aki here at Vultr. In today's Tech Talk, join me as we discuss automating instance configurations using Cloud-Init on Vultr. And by doing so, you actually benefit from simplified instance initialization and the entire management of your instance after deployment. And to begin with, what's Cloud-Init anyway? Cloud-Init is a software tool designed to initialize and automate instance configurations right at the boot phase. It supports user-defined scripts in the form of user data and supports multiple logging and debugging levels, which helps you troubleshoot your instance in case of any errors. Cloud-Init integrates with CI/CD pipelines, making it possible for you to deploy specific instances that run specific customizations to match your needs. And among its key capabilities, Cloud-Init supports user data and script execution, which makes it possible for you to define specific scripts and run them on your instance right at the boot phase. Cloud-Init supports SSH key injection, which makes it possible for you to create specific users in your configuration file and assign them specific SSH keys right at the boot phase without actually logging into the instance to actually set these values manually. Cloud-Init also supports package installations and configurations, making it possible for you to run specific applications right at the boot phase without going in to manually configure these applications in order to run on your instance correctly. However, how does Cloud-Init exactly work? Cloud-Init is supported by most cloud providers, including Vultr, and makes it possible for you to select a cloud image and customize it using user data, vendor data, and metadata to actually make sure that you have a customized cloud instance. And to achieve this, Cloud-Init actually does this in phases: the init phase, config, and final phase. In the init phase, Cloud-Init initializes your cloud instance to actually make sure that it has the correct network information and any other cloud provider specific data that it actually needs to run. In the config phase, Cloud-Init executes your user data to make sure that all configurations you specified in the file can actually be run on this particular instance, while in the final phase, Cloud-Init executes any final scripts that could be having a simple message such as, "Hello world, this instance is successfully deployed." So just like that, Cloud-Init works by modifying the source cloud image and making sure that it's customized with vendor-specific data and your own configurations to actually run with specific configurations to match your needs. And by using Cloud-Init, you actually benefit from accelerated instance provisioning since your time is cut into half by making sure that all configurations are actually run at the boot phase. It enhances resource monitoring since the Cloud-Init phase actually makes sure that your instance has all required resources it needs to actually run. And by using Cloud-Init, you actually minimize all occurrences of human error. By automating processes, you can actually streamline a single configuration and make sure that everything is in place instead of manually running specific configurations that may actually break up your instance. And so, based on this background, let me take you right into a demo where we shall actually use Cloud-Init on a Vultr Cloud instance. In this particular demo, we shall create a simple Cloud-Init user data script and deploy to a Vultr Cloud instance to make sure that the instance runs with our specific customizations and can be accessed by multiple users that we may have created in our Cloud-Init configuration without actually accessing the instance in the first place. And so, without any further ado, let's get right into this demo process. So, to begin with our demo process, I have this simple Cloud-Init file right here. So this particular file uses the YAML conversion, and in this file we have some key major sections in here. So we have the users section, packages, and run CMD. And if we focus on the user section right here, you can see that we have a new user we are creating with the username John. And in particular, the geckos directive right here defines the full user's name. So for instance, let's put the name John Doe. And you can see that we are granting this user sudo privileges by adding them to the sudo group, and they must use the bash shell by default. as defined in this particular directive. So the log password directive actually makes sure that this user can actually log in with their password. If set to true, they cannot log in with this password unless they have an SSH key. So to actually make sure that this user actually has a password we can assign them, let's go ahead and actually generate a new hash password. In this situation, I have a Linux server and I have installed the whois package, which actually stores the make password utility. And if we run the make password utility right here, you can see that we can enter a password and receive a hashed string right here. So let's go ahead and copy this string and assign it to the user right here. Let's do the same for the user Jen. Let's assign the user with the full name Jendo. And in the hashed password, let's pass the same password so that these users can actually use the same password. However, they can change them at their will. Right in this additional field right here, we have the preserve hostname directive, which makes sure that we disable the hostname that we actually enter during the deployment phase and prefer using the fqdn over the hostname by setting the prefer fqdn directive to true. Under the fqdn, I'm using this simple domain, which is techtalk.example.com, and I'm rephrasing this particular instance's hostname to TechTalk. So right within packages, we are installing some new packages. In this case, we are installing Apache, MySQL, and PHP together with the appropriate modules. In addition, we are actually going to install Git and rclone, which we may need to use on this instance. So in simple terms, we are installing the LAMP stack together with some few packages we can actually use to transfer files and clone Git repositories and all that. In the run cmd section right here, we are going to enable the Apache service to run at system boot, and these commands actually run once and never run again. If you like to make commands run again at each boot, instead use the boot cmd directive or the boot cmd section to actually define specific commands you like to run each time this server boots up. And in particular, we are interested in this particular command, which prints the date at which this server is actually deployed. So the date command will output this value to the file server birth certificate, which makes sure that we can print the date at which this server was deployed at. And so let's actually go ahead and put this particular file into play. To do that, let me select all and copy the contents of this entire file. And let's navigate right into the Vultr customer portal, in which we shall actually see if we can deploy an instance using this Cloud-Init user data. So right within the Vultr customer portal, click deploy server to go ahead and deploy a new cloud instance. Right on this deploy new instance page, let's go ahead and select the type. For instance, I'll keep optimize cloud compute selected. Let's go ahead and select a Vultr location. For instance, I'll select Paris, France. In this case, let's keep Debian selected. And right within the additional features section right here, let's find this particular option, which is Cloud-Init user data. So this enables you to upload all data that we created in the script and make sure that we can actually run it on this instance right at the boot phase. So let's just paste in our data right here. Let's give this a name such as example server and click deploy now to make sure that we can deploy this instance. So as this instance deploys, it will actually go through the Cloud-Init stages to make sure that our Cloud-Init user data is deployed. So just give this process just a few seconds, and once the status changes to running, you can access this instance and monitor the Cloud-Init progress right within the Vultr console. So now that this server status has changed to running, let's go ahead and access it. This means we can actually monitor the rest of the process. Now let's just click view console to actually see the status of this particular instance. So now in this particular Vultr console output, you can see that Cloud-Init is actually installing some packages, and in particular, you can see that it's installing PHP 8.2 and a couple of other packages that we actually defined in our user script. So just monitor this process right here as it goes through the init, config, and final stages. And so you can see in this particular output that the Cloud-Init process is actually complete, and we can actually go ahead and access our instance. So for instance, let's just press enter, and if we enter the username Jen, and if we enter the password we assign this user and press enter, you can see that we can actually access this particular instance right here. To actually verify that we indeed can access this instance using this user, let's actually go ahead and use SSH instead. So if I navigate back to this particular development machine I'm using and SSH to this particular instance using the Jen user, accept the fingerprint, and enter the user password we generated earlier, which is this particular hash password, you can see that once again, we can actually log in to this particular server. If we check for its hostname is techtalk.example.com. And if we see its server path, that file that we actually wrote at the initial boot phase, you can see that we have some time recorded right here. So now to actually verify if we have the user John in here, let's just switch to the user John. And you can see now that we also have John right on this particular server. So in simple terms, we have used Cloud-Init to actually create 2 new users, change the host name, and actually make sure that we write a simple file, which is server path certificate. Now, let's actually query for the status of the Apache service to make sure that it was installed and this particular user has sudo privileges on this server. So if you run systemctl and query for the status of the Apache service, you can see that it's active and running. And remember earlier that we also installed another package, which is rclone. In this case, let's actually run rclone. And you can see that it's also installed and it gives us this simple help page. So this means Cloud-Init actually run all configurations that we need. If you'd like to know the collection of your Cloud-Init configurations, they are stored in the etc cloud directory. And as you can see in this etc cloud directory, you can see the cloud.cfg file, which includes the cloud configuration that was used to initialize this instance. So this makes it possible for you to actually use Cloud-Init in a much smooth way possible. All in all, Cloud-Init is a very powerful tool you can use to customize your instances to actually match specific configurations and run specific applications or packages that match your needs. You can use Cloud-Init to automate the entire configuration process and simply create a single file that you can deploy on multiple servers to make sure that they run the same services. And in case you're using services such as a Vultr load balancer, Cloud-Init makes it possible for you to deploy your configurations and applications to make sure that they match correctly without any human errors, since all configurations would have been the same and you simply use the load balancer to set up your preferred load balancing scheme. And so, I hope you did find this tech talk useful. If you did, I'd like to wish you the best on creating your next Cloud-Init user data script that you can actually use to customize your next Vultr Cloud instance. Once again, thank you for watching and see you in the next Vultr Tech Talk.